thank you everyone for coming. The meeting of the WSD, January 28th, will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location, where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email or by text message. As we begin, we want to take a moment to just remind everyone about community meeting norms.
Just gonna read them off. We're gonna every few meetings we'll read them just as a reminder. Use sensitivity when discussing school matters. Engage in respectful and non-judgmental listening. Assume positive intentions. Be accountable for impact. Board discussions should include all voices equally. Be mindful of each other's times and shared responsibility.
Okay, thank you. I want to take a moment as we begin to welcome our newest board member, Jessica Everwood. Thank you. Jessica is filling the vacant seat from the town of Dummerston, and a town close to my heart. I wonder why. So welcome. And we could take a moment and just go around the room and hear names. That would be great. Okay?
Anna Beekman from Putney.
Deborah Stanford from Dummerston.
Kim Press from Brattleboro.
Brian Reamer, Guilford.
Ruby McAdoo from Putney.
Sean Murphy from Guilford.
Okay. Board members, as we go around, please.
Matt Shibley from Brattleboro.
Tim Basile, Brattleboro.
Okay. And Colleen, you're online.
I am. I'm Colleen Savage. I'm from Brattleboro as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And the administrators sitting around the room, beginning with.
Yeah, Frank Rucker, I'm the business administrator.
Mark Spino, superintendent.
Director of the Career Center.
Hi Jessica, I'm Bryn Tucker. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
Okay, and we have, I'm so sorry.
It's totally fine. Hannah Parker, BUHS principal and Dummerston resident.
Dummerston is getting a lot of.
I know, we're getting a lot of love
reviews
tonight.
here. Yes, okay. If appropriate, agenda items are subject to potential action. And if any board member feels that an item of the consent agenda warrants discussion, this item will be removed from the consent agenda and set aside for discussion. In this way, the consent agenda will be approved in one motion. That request should be made before we vote on the consent agenda. Regarding said consent agenda, it actually needs to include the minutes from January 13, 2025 for approval. So it will be January 13, January 14, and January 21 when we get to the consent agenda. One more item before we get to the business of the agenda itself. I'm going to ask board members and administrators and community members to save the date. February 24, it's a Monday, and I have an invitation out on behalf of the board and community to legislators, and Beekman is going to help with certain legislators, as well as a representative from the Agency on Education, the AOE, to present the proposed plan to reorganize Vermont's educational system. This is very much in the news, and we as a community, very much need to hear what this plan looks like, as well as an opportunity to answer questions. And depending upon the outpouring of interest, I'm assuming we'll be able to get some space in a larger venue than this room. So,
Do you have a time?
I'm assuming 6 p.m. I'm gonna schedule it for 6 p.m. and that gives people a chance to leave work and settle in and arrive. So Monday, the 24th. Okay, yes, Mark.
I just got a text message from somebody in the virtual world, and it's difficult for them to hear the meeting right now, so I just wanted to share.
Thank you. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so let's hope the volume is better. But again, February 24th. Please put that on your calendar. Okay, we're going to begin with student matters. This is a time for students to present their concerns, their ideas, their suggestions, their questions. I'm not loud enough? Sorry. Okay. Any students who want to speak at this time, please raise your hand and alert us. Okay, I don't see any student hands. And so we're going to move on to public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time for the board to listen and to take notes. It is not a time for the board to respond to comments or to engage in dialogue with the public. If appropriate, the board and administration will work on next steps. And again, this is for non-agenda items. Comments? Would you, as you speak, would you please announce your name and your town?
Jody Normandeau, Dummerston. I may have been misinformed, but I thought this was going to be a budget meeting for the public. And I didn't see anything in the paper at all about that. And I think I did email you and ask you about it, and today there was still nothing that I saw in the paper. I didn't see anything on Facebook or whatever, so was I misinformed?
I don't know that you were misinformed. I'm wondering about past practice. And I did send your comment on to the central office. And I did speak to the central office about this earlier today. My understanding is that, and forgive me, that the way this is organized this evening is following established past practice. That's my understanding. That's what I was told. We can certainly pursue this. There is another public information session scheduled, I believe, March 11. Is that correct? It's March 11th. And that obviously takes place before March 18th, the district annual meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I can't give you more than that. Yes, Martha,
To support
your
Jody's
name and your town.
Martha Noyce, Brattleboro. To support Jody's mystification of the purpose of the meeting other than going on the agenda, I was quite sure I spoke months ago about this meeting and was suggesting there be enough advertisement out there for the public to know about this and at different times other than 6 o'clock. So I too was taken back that it wasn't heard.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. George Carville, Brattleboro. I have two things, one having to do with the budget and one not. Do I make it two comments or throw them both together?
Well, we are gonna get to the budget.
All right.
It is on the agenda.
So leaving the budget comment for later. I was hoping that I could ask that someone from the administration let me know and let the public know what the town's policy is when ICE agents show up at his school door and want in.
I'm just going, public comment on non-agenda items, I just said we're not gonna comment. I am going to comment about this, and I am going to say that it will be on the agenda at the next board meeting, which is February 11, I do believe.
Thank you.
And it will also be on the agenda for the next policy and amendment committee meeting. Because there are other districts that have precise policies on that issue. And that meeting is taking place on February 12th, the very next day. I don't know, Mark, if you want to address that?
I think that's fine. What you
That's
just
good,
shared.
okay, all right. So we are getting a lot of concerned emails and comments about that very issue. Thank you for raising that. Okay, sir.
Yeah, Richard DeGray, Brattleboro. Two quick comments. One, you referenced May 11th. I would guess that's an informational meeting.
March
Or
11th.
March, whatever. My apologies. This is the adoption of the budget, this meeting here. And so not having notification out so that people could attend this meeting and question what's happening here is somewhat problematic. Two, I would ask, we were pretty fortunate last week with that incident that almost happened. And I'm concerned about training with the police department and the hospital for potential incidents that almost came to light, and we're lucky that it didn't. But how often are we doing trainings with our local municipality and services and the hospital in case something catastrophic happens at this school or any other school? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
To follow up on Mr.
Can you identify
Mark
one more
Noyes,
time? Sorry.
Brattleboro. Sorry. To follow up on Mr. Carvel's question and your response with the question would be addressed at the next meeting, should we infer that there's no policy in place and that these agents would be allowed in?
There's no specific policy, but there's law.
There's a what?
There's law
Okay.
and procedure and guidance that we have received from our local, from our attorney. So we would follow the law.
Where can we find the law?
I don't have the exact statute in my mind. to
Could
share.
you email me?
Sure.
Thank you.
But without a warrant, there would be no access granted.
I think that's the critical, I think that's the critical point. Right, without a warrant, you just cannot walk into a school and demand anything. All right, yes, George.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to belabor it, but without what kind of warrant?
Okay, this is getting very
I mean,
specific.
there's some warrants let them in and some don't, so.
Right, okay, thank you, thank you. And this is why it's going to come up at a board meeting, and because our goal is to protect the well-being of our students and their families to the extent that we can. Other comment on non-agenda items? Okay. All right, so we are now moving on to the fiscal report, to the public information part of this meeting.
I'd like to start if I may.
Absolutely. Sean, would you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, Sean Murphy from Guilford. In conjunction with Frank, and I've written a little narrative that I'd like to read. It is important for voters to know the multiple parts of the Windham Southeast School District. The single district is made up of 4 towns: Putney, Dummerston, Guilford, and Brattleboro. Within these 4 towns, there are 9 school sites. The student enrollment is about 2,300 students. There are 440 employees, which include 275 certified professionals and 166 non-certified staff who are working every day to assure that students are learning and well supported. Our staff also work with contracted service providers who support food service, transportation, and other operational systems to help students access a positive environment for student learning. As people are aware, the budget development for this district is an ongoing process. In early fall of 2024, principals and educational professionals review student data to plan for the FY26 school year. Numerous statistics are studied: number of students per grade, educational needs of students, material requirements necessary to facilitate the successful education of the district students. In early September, the finance manager and the superintendent develop a budget planning timeline, a comprehensive, detailed work plan that includes specific dates and criteria that are to be followed to construct the FY26 budget. On September 10th, 2024, a district-wide summit that included administrators and the WSESD board was held to codify the continuous improvement plan goals that are used to define the basis for the FY26 budget. There are 4 CIP goals established: increase the math proficiency by 10%, increase the English language arts by 10%, increase the graduation rate from BUHS, and increase the sense of safety and belonging of our student body. In November of 2024, meetings were held to define the specific resources that are necessary for the successful educational outcomes of the district. Specifically, the Finance Committee reviewed the 6 elementary budgets, secondary schools, including the Windham Regional Technical Center, and the district-wide programs, which include special education services. The WSESD board reviewed the comprehensive draft budget on 12/17/24 and 1/14/25, and here we are again tonight on the 28th. During these review meetings, there was input from school leaders, educational staff, members of the public, and members of the central office leadership team. As mentioned, the FY26 WSESD total budget is in the amount of $67,736,630. Subtracting offsetting revenue in the amount of $7,391,468 results in the amount of education spending, which is $60,345,162. Dividing the education spending by the equalized pupil count of 3,807 results in a per pupil cost of $15,840. $851. Dividing the per pupil spending by the state mandated yield number of 8,553 results in a unified district tax rate of $1.853. The increase of the FY25 budget to the FY26 are as follows. A total budget increase of 1.1%. An increase in the spending per pupil of 6.7%. The long-term weighted average student number represents an increase of about 72 students. The major cost drivers contributed to the spending increase are 12% increase in health insurance in the amount of $663,311. After a reduction of 10 positions, the FY26 budget, the estimated salary and wages to be negotiated for $574,896. Special education costs services, $431,534. The major drivers represent a $1,100,000, I have that number incorrect. Could you clarify?
$1,106,000.
Thank you. Overall increase, which has been offset by spending reductions. The WSESD is able to reduce the capital improvement expenses by $1,338,006. This is due to the administration and board commitment of the use of ESSER funds proactively during the 2021 through 2025 fiscal years. The WSES board and the WSESD administration have been able to maintain the total budget increase to 1.1%, despite many cost increases outside of the control of the district. The town tax rate is determined by dividing the unified rate of $1.86.4 by each town's statewide CLA, and is projected to be lower than the current year. On average, actual homestead school property tax rates are expected to decline by 0.3% in fiscal year 2026. Due to the unique changes in the common level of appraisal for each town, most towns will see a larger decrease in taxes in FY26. And one town, Dummerston, will see an increase. So that's the overview.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that introduction, I think we turn this meeting over to Frank Rucker, the Chief Financial Officer. But before we do that, I'm sorry, I saw her hand. Yes, again, would you introduce yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, George Carroll. Actually, probably have a question. Take this whole budget. If the federal impoundment doesn't get reversed, what's the total hit on our budget and our taxes, whether directly from federal or through the state?
This budget includes about a little less than $1 million in federal aid. There's been no indication that the Title I, that's the primary grant, is in jeopardy
so far.
Yeah, but you know,
Only
it's
Title I?
it's meaningful, but it's not a catastrophic a component. It does fund essential services, and it would have an effect on its support for math and literacy proficiency. So it would absolutely be detrimental, but there's no indication at this point.
The Title I's our only exposure, is that what you're saying?
That is our primary. There are smaller titles, but that is by far the most significant.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you.
Sure. Mark, let's go.
Yeah, I was gonna do a little intro, but I think Sean really covered it. What I would just like to emphasize is, you know, dealing with a pandemic and then recovering from a pandemic. And, you know, we benefited from many millions of dollars in federal funds to invest in our school system. We've taken the approach to invest in our buildings. And also at the early stages of our recovery, investing in additional positions to support our students coming out of the pandemic. With the understanding that these new positions that we invested in early on were not sustainable in the long run. So specifically over the last 2 budget periods, we've really been aware of attrition and really thinking ahead to this moment in time, knowing that we would need to reduce positions and programs. And this budget reflects those reductions, and I think it's a testament to the board and the administration really being forward-thinking over the past 4 years, because yes, it's great to get all this federal money, but it's also a major challenge knowing that you can't sustain that new bump in our budget. So I feel confident and proud to present this budget this evening, and we feel it's fiscally responsible and still meets the needs of our students and staff and community. Perfect.
Yeah. So I'll add a few more comments, but between what Mark has just shared and what Sean has provided as an overview, you know, it really does recap the key points, particularly on the fiscal level of this proposal. In the package that I've distributed to all of you, there are a couple of new documents. And so I'll spend a little bit of time on that. But, and maybe for the benefit of any members of the public that did not join us, and maybe Jessica, kind of a quick overview. So, first page on the budget document, and by the way, I do plan on covering the capital plan. It's part of the budget proposal. As you just heard, Sean presented $67,736,000, and that's up $744,000 or 1.1% over the current plan. In the graph, you see that our overwhelming amount of funding goes toward direct instruction, which is the 2 blue squares. The biggest square or semicircle in the pie chart there is regular ed instruction, and the blue wedge on the left is primarily special education services, but it also does include the other central office services that are allocated to the district. And you see under the changes in the budget there at the summary level on the first page. The major reduction, if you look at the largest number on the difference column, is, as Mark just alluded to, in capital. We're still spending and investing in our buildings, but you see that figure down under operation, maintenance, and facility down $989,000, and that's because we made multiple millions of improvements in fiscal year 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, as Sean highlighted. So the page 2 is very much what Sean has just outlined in a very concise narrative, so I won't reiterate that. Maybe at the very bottom of the page, you see that over the next fiscal year 25, 26, 27, 3 years, we still have $12 million worth of projects in our capital funding committed to, and that is what is in the other document that we'll cover tonight here in just a little bit. Page 3 is the tax calculations. The yellow highlights on page 3 provide comparative information that is new to us. The legislature passed something called Act 183 last year, effective for this fiscal year. It changes the mathematics around how taxes are calculated, but in the end, it results in the same actual tax. So down on page 3, line 40, you see the estimated tax is projected to decline 1.4% in Brattleboro because of Dummerston CLA changing by 16% in 1 year, which is very unusual, but that suggests that property values sort of skyrocketed in Dummerston relative to tax assessed values. But because of that, Dummerston has a projected increase of 6%. If they go through a reappraisal, which I assume they will, it's likely that will be mitigated, as we saw in Guilford a couple of years ago. But Guilford, because they are essentially almost at 100% tax assessed value relative to the market values, taxes there are projected to decline 5.8%. And in Putney, pretty even, $1.35 this year, $1.34 next year, but down slightly. One last comment on the tax page, line 20. If Act 183 didn't exist, the bottom line there would not change, because it's simply the way they derive the math, but the presentation is different. And line 20 shows you what the school board equalized tax rate would have been if we didn't apply this something called statewide adjustment. So you may recall this year our tax rate is $1.50 for fiscal year 25, and that's what's called the equalized tax rate. It's not adjusted by the real estate market. And if the legislature had left the funding formula alone, we would have been presenting $1.34. Or the school board budget would reflect an equalized tax rate down 7.7%. And I think that's pretty notable. The reason why it's not presented that way is because the Act 183, the legislature applied the CLA to the yield, the very top number on the page, which means they brought in the real estate market effects into the school board's equalized pupil calculation, which I think is unfortunate, but it was legislative action. And in the end, overall, as Sean has said, we're projecting taxes to be down. The page 4, just wanted to bring our attention to what's a very important statistic, fund balance. So on the bottom of page 4, for you folks that work with financial statements, fund balance is the accumulation of the difference between assets and liabilities, all your spending and all your receipts over the history of the entity. It's a a compilation of all transactions that get reduced to one number. And it's a measure of solvency. So at the end of June this past year, where we just finished our audit, June of 2024, we had 3.5 million in fund balance in the general fund. You see that on page 4. This year, we started with a presentation to the electorate to refund 950,000 of fund balance, but I hope all of you recall town meeting, because the state rescinded a law that had capped taxes at 5%. They rescinded it 2 weeks before town meeting. We had already published a budget. We needed to react to that, and as a result, so that we maintain taxes where they have been historically and did not spike them for our voters, we raised that 950,000 to that 2,048,000, so that we could maintain stable tax rates in the region. So that brought our 3.5 million as of this last June down to 1.4 million. And then, as you see in this budget proposal, we're proposing 500,000 out of that 1.4 million to once again continue to stabilize tax rates. It still leaves us nearly $1 million in fund balance in the general fund, and about 800,000 in the capital fund. So still a very solvent entity, and with our proposed budget, we feel that we are in a very good fiscal shape. Pages 5 and 6 are just the sort of the details of the revenue assumptions that come in. I think we've covered those before. Page 7 is a summary of the capital plan. I actually handed out the capital plan in detail in December, but we've created the detail, updated the planning assumptions, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But there's a summary of the capital plan, which what you're looking at, the fiscal year 26 column. I do hope the board will consider approving that plan as well this evening. Remember, there's a lot of work that goes into the specification, development, engineering, design that needs to happen in February, March, April if we're going to have any chance of going into bid in May and June to start the work in July, August, and so on. So, but what you're looking at there is 3.2 million fiscal year 26. In the top batch of narrative is infrastructure. So you see again fire protection, mechanical, lighting, roof is the largest investment, along with some grounds improvements. And then we have the same information in the middle of the page, same 3.2 million, but it's by school site. So you see the high school being the largest campus, 1.6 million of that 3.2, along with the other school sites. And these vary significantly. For example, if you look at Academy, Academy really needed additional space to accommodate the special education students and the Title I students. Many of them were in the modular building that was seriously depreciated and underserved our students. So, we always invest where the useful life of assets has matured and where our students need the learning facilities. So that's just one example. And at the bottom of the page, you see we have 2.2 million in the general operating fund, but we're proposing to spend 3.2 million, and we're expecting $100,000 in grants, So that means we'll draw that $889,000 off the reserve fund, and there's that $800,000 fund balance I just shared with you earlier. That is not an unusual fund balance figure, but as you look historically, we were up around nearly $5 million in fund balance, and that's when we had applied for so many of those federal grants, and we were successful in getting them. A couple more points, and then I think I'll have shared what I had intended. Page 9 through page 18 is the summary by school site in the state's traditional format of presenting school budget information to the public and for board review and consideration. So what we're looking at on page 9, for example, at our Academy School, we're presenting information first, locally funded, and then the second group of figures is our federally funded programs. So for example, in Academy School, 7.3 million, you see is the local funded proposed budget. Of that 7.3 million, 5 million is direct instruction. And then you have your support services for students. That would be programs like guidance and nursing. And then we have our support services for instruction. That would be, like the library and professional development. And then we have administration, school operations, facility. And the transportation is really just for field trips and maybe a winter activity. Transportation is managed through the supervisory union, and it is part of what I showed you on page 1, that the smaller blue wedge that is part of school operations assessed. The federal programs for Academy total $310,000. So George, back to your question. Here's a glimpse at what that looks like. $288,000 in direct instruction, and you can see it's less than 1% of our budget, but it's a meaningful 1%. So in total, Academy School proposal up $111,000, 1.5% change. So as we go through each page, I won't go through all the detail because we've done this since November in finance. As Sean pointed out, very meticulous review of each school site, each program, and the rationale for the spending plan. High school, 1.1%. You see on page 10 is the proposed increase. Page 11, Dummerston, up 3%. Go to page 12, Guilford, up 2.9. Putney, page 13, up 5.4. And the middle school, page 14, 2.7, that's Brattleboro area middle school. By the way, this is organized by the state codes. They assign these codes, so it might seem random, but that's why it's in this order. Oak Grove is their codes 1383, page 15. They're down 22%. Now you might say, what's going on at Oak Grove? But for folks that have been part of budget development and aware of what's going on in the capital plan, we have put an enormous amount of work into bringing that facility up to a top-notch status, and it's actually a very innovative solution. It's our first school where we've brought in 100% heat pump technology for both heating and cooling. And that is, we had a 1929 steam oil boiler, definitely way beyond its useful life. We were able to acquire some grants that were actually not the ESSER funding. And you see we've gone from 1.2 million in 25 that we're comparing ourselves to 700,000 in 26, which that 700,000, about 400 of that is finishing that project. And so you see a reduction there, and that's why this is one of our smaller schools, and when you have a large capital change in a small school, makes the percent changes kind of unusual. Green Street, proposed budget up 4.6% on page 16. And then our district-wide, this is where the board made a couple of revisions. At our last meeting, reduced the board budget. And you see that under page 17, district-wide programs. School board, it's the second line down on the first group of numbers there. You see the board budget down 45,000 as a result of that discussion. Oh yes, and of course we don't ever want to forget the Career Center. Page 18, Nancy's just doing a remarkable job at our Tech Center enrollment's up. And we're getting lots of recognition, and Nancy's done just a terrific job attracting a great deal of grants, which were not part of the ESSER funding stream for whatever reason, but Nancy was able to acquire many other grants. I have added the next couple of pages after page 18, it's the enrollment data. I've given you sort of a general estimates of this, but this is our typical enrollment data that we include in the annual report. So that page right after page 18 is enrollment by town, and it's for a running 3-year trend. You see the town totals 2,398 students in 2022, 2,354 in 2023, and 2,340 as of this past November. So it's fairly stable, but there is somewhat of a decline there. Very typical across Vermont. One thing I'll add there, though, is that our own resident population is pretty stable. It's actually the tuition town enrollment and population is declining, and I don't know if folks have heard much about the area news, but for example, our friends just to the north of Jamaica, town of Jamaica, part of the Windham Central Supervisory Union, have gone from 65 kids, they had 14 kids in the whole K through 6 school. They were not able to attract a principal, teaching principal and so on, so that was just in the news needing to be closed. But that's affecting us, because Dover, Woodsboro, that's all of that system, that Marlboro, that send kids to our region, and it's unfortunate, but it's what it is. The next page of enrollment, you see it's the same 2,340 kids, but it's by school site. So again, you can see how enrollment has varied by school site over the last 3 years. The page following that is what I've handed out many times. It's what we put on our website. It helps general public and the board be able to decipher the required uniform chart of accounts that we use to capture all public information on the fiscal level. So, gone over that a number of times, but if you want to be able to easily read these financial reports, it's good to look at that uniform chart of accounts, UCOA definitions. It helps you interpret the presentation. So I think that's what I was hoping to cover. And before we move off fiscal, maybe Deborah, if there's questions, I do want to talk to the captain.
Okay. So we're opening it up at this point. Sean?
Yeah, I just have one question. You know, the student count is about 2,300, and yet on the other page, could you talk about how we get to 3,807?
Oh yeah, yeah. So that's part of another act. I think it's Act 127, 3 years ago, and it's all about the state revisiting the way in which resources are allocated to schools with different socioeconomic conditions. Quite a while ago, I would say before the pandemic, the legislature commissioned the University of Vermont to do an assessment of how valid the weighting system was prior to the study. And they came up with the conclusion it's terrible. It does not properly distribute funding to towns like Brattleboro, where we are a higher level of poverty than the state average. So the weighting, to Sean's point, gets our 2,340 kids up to 3,800 kids by saying for the students in poverty, they're going to add a whole additional count of 1. So if that was the only weight, I could do the math, but what you could derive how many kids in poverty, right? And you could say, well, okay, so they've double counted X number of kids to get from 2,300 to 3,800. It's because they're adding these additional weights. The other weights are for English language learners. That they're actually adding a factor of 2, what they call full-time equivalent or average daily memberships, ADM, statistics to those kids. We have about 80 of those kids, English language learners. So that's the way that works. And you can see if our number was 2,340 and we divided that into our education spending, our cost per student would be 16,000 or 17,000. It would be so much higher than where we are because we are dividing our ed spending by a much higher number, and that's the point of the formula. By having a larger count, it reduces the tax rate. And the theory is, and there's a lot of concern about this theory, but the theory is that school boards and communities will find that spending toward the state average is acceptable, and they won't just take a lower tax rate and say we're done, but they'll say we support all the intervention that goes with helping kids more proficient in math, addressing socioeconomic related known correlations with needing more support to bring kids up to grade level around reading, math, and so on. And that's what this system has done, and that's what our community has been incredibly consistent at supporting our investment in our instructional coaches and professional development, in social workers, in all of those support systems that it's known, the research base says that there's going to be a high correlation between poverty and low proficiency unless there are those investments. And that's what you just heard from our presentation. As Mark has said, and as you've seen from the work that Bryn Tucker and her team have done in terms of the student growth, understanding where our proficiency is and where we want to go, but the success that we've had in math and literacy at achieving above the state average despite in proficiency, despite being much higher poverty, it's a reflection of the results, not just some ideas and theory. It's the results that this team has produced.
Thank you. Tim, would you identify yourself?
Tim Maceo, Brattleboro. My question is about per pupil expenditures, average. It's not broken down by school. Before the merger, of course, you had school PPE. We're at 15,000 something. The state has a cap of 16,000. The question is, for a school like, say, Oak Grove, with a high poverty level, would it be okay for that school to have a PPE above the 16,000 threshold? And how much variance is there in our schools?
What is PPE?
Per pupil expenditure.
Right, I just so that I think we need the acronyms to go out the window. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely look at that in terms of equitable use of resources. As always, as you know, the budget starts with the principal's recommendation for staffing, for professional development, for the intervention services that we've talked about. And then that obviously has to correlate with the student need and with results over time. And then as far as presenting that information, that's the point of states weighting by each individual name. Each student is identified in our PowerSchool database. The state pulls that data from our system and then compares that to their Department of Health statistics that we don't see, but they know which families are accessing the various subsidies for families in poverty. And then they send back those statistics to us in the aggregate. They don't send them back, in individual names. Meaning the aggregate, that 3,807 number. So the funding formula, the state law requires this format in terms of its presentation. When systems were unique districts, they all had their own grand list and tax base, and that was vital that you were differentiating each school if it was a separate district. But with the merger, fortunately for our smaller towns like Guilford, Dummerston, and Putney, it doesn't affect them if their enrollment is up or down in terms of tax rate. It's a union.
But it would be useful information to gauge the efficiency of the school spending to know what the per pupil expenditure is by school. No.
Sure, but I don't know which families are accessing what in each school, and so what we can do is we can take just total enrollment, like in that sheet I just showed you, and we do that, just total enrollment divided by spending, and we have a very good sense of what's equitable and what's not. But it's not driven on a math formula. It's driven on student need and progress.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Sean? Jessica?
My question is about the fund balance. So you spoke about it and about it being slightly inflated from the ESSR funds. What was it prior to COVID? What kind of fund balance were we carrying?
Well, this system has, when it was created in 2019, through the merger process, it brought in a $2 million fund balance that had been from several years. Most of that was the Brattleboro Union High School. Dummerston had no fund balance, Guilford had very little. So when you put them all together, that was about a typical fund balance. And we try to keep that as a target. So being a little under $1 million is it's on the light side, but these are the circumstances we're dealing with, and we want to keep those tax rates level or down.
Is there any type of strategic planning to rebuild that fund balance as we dip into it quite a bit over the next few years?
Yes, and to rebuild fund balance actually is contradictory to the state law and the funding formula.
Okay.
So the way we've built fund balance over the past is actually through additional tuition students that have enrolled after this day when we've put our budget together. What that does is if 30 kids from Vernon decide to come here and not go to Pioneer Valley, we don't have to hire 30 new, anybody's, right? Especially if it's like 4 grade levels or 6 grade levels. 3 kids in a grade level, it's not gonna make a difference on the teachers, number of teachers we need. It's not gonna change the lighting. So that creates, by state law, revenue. It's about $18,000, $19,000 per student.
Mm-hmm.
So for several years, for whatever reason, the tuition enrollment was rising in this area. And that was creating this additional fund balance. That's the way fund balance often is created. It's not, it's unusual for a district to just put a number in that says this is to create fund balance. And actually, as I said, it's contradictory to state law. Yeah.
Sean, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did have one more question, just sort of building up what Tim was saying. There is the excess spending threshold at $15,926. I don't know how that's created. That comes down from the state, right?
It does, yeah, that's a good question. I haven't seen a derivation of that number. In general, it's based on the average prior year state spending, public school state spending, times an index. I think it used to be 15%, but the rationale for that, I don't know. It also does not seem to take into account, like we were saying earlier, variations in proportion of students eligible for an IEP in a region, or necessarily the level of poverty, even though indirectly and theoretically the student count is accounting for some of that.
And they had rescinded the excess spending. So it was supposed to be going no threshold until 2029, if I remember right.
That's right, they rescinded it in
So they put it back
2000.
in this year.
Right after the pandemic, they rescinded it. That was 2020, and it was supposed to be rescinded through 2029. Last year, the state did a lot of changes to the funding formula, created quite a crisis, and so this is all part of the fallout of that crisis.
Okay, yes, Martha.
Martha Noyes, Brattleboro. On the capital plan, page 7, there's no detail given to the signal systems for telephone, $50,000. What details can you give me?
Deborah, shall we jump into the capital plan?
Sure.
I'm happy to
Any
do that.
other questions? So let's hold that one for the moment. Dick?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't get here too often, and I want to thank Frank. I got a hold of him today and got all this information, more than I could comprehend. Good news today is that the governor in his speech is proposing $77 million to the education fund in one-time funding. A couple of things that have probably been gone over more times than I care to talk about. Well, one thing that concerns me, I talked to Frank about it. The new member talked about fund balance. And I'm not a fan of using fund balance to artificially do your job as board members. Because we have $1.5 million in this budget that we're making up from the current year where it's a little over $2 million. And we're only putting in $500,000 this year. And so you didn't reduce spending, so somebody's got to pay for that, and that's all of us taxpayers. And so I would hope that you would heed that, because it is a trick that's used every year, not only by the school, but municipalities, to make their tax rate look good. What is the dropout rate and the graduation rate, and are they different or one of the same?
You have Hannah here, maybe Hannah has that info readily available?
Not readily available. I think that one thing I'm actually looking into at the state, because our graduation rate hasn't been renewed in the last 2 years, so we're not sure what the updated one is. But it's also come to my attention that any students that complete high school in 3.5 years are not counted as part of the 4-year graduation rate. So I'm literally in the process of trying to figure out like what the numbers actually mean. Because like we have, I would say at least 10 students that finished last week, and the question is, are they being considered as part of our graduation rate as they're graduating in June? So it's not a great answer, but I'm looking into it.
So you're gonna get a hold of me when you get that answer?
Absolutely.
I'm easy to find.
Perfect.
In the district-wide budget, I'd like to tell you what page, but it talked about 48 off-site placements. How much is that costing the district?
I think you're now in the Windham Central.
Yeah.
I'm the Windham Supervisory Union, the central office budget.
I was just, when I was looking through that, I saw.
I think we have our central
Somebody might
office
have
team
that
here.
answer off the top of their head.
Yeah, so different budget, different entity, but generally, outside placements can be between $70,000 and $100,000. These are based on individual education plans that are decided by a team, and it's to specifically address a learning disability, and that's based on a evaluation. It's not just an arbitrary process, as you I'm sure know.
So getting back to the budget here, I noticed that the athletic director is getting a $20,000 raise. That's unconscionable.
Yeah, no, that's a.
You can't give me a good reason for giving somebody a $20,000 raise.
No, the athletic director is not getting a $20,000 raise. He's the proposal is for the same raise that everybody else is getting, and what you're looking at is, and I did give you a document today.
You did.
Yeah, and so
you're a difference from what I see here.
You must be looking at a different document.
Which one am I looking at?
Yeah. So the difference is in a prior period, the athletic director's position had allocations to department head in the physical education department, department head at driver's ed, and different areas of responsibility. That has been realigned. So what you would need to do, as I provided with you today, consolidate all compensation into one number for this year and then compare it to next year. That's what I provided you, and you'll see that he's in the same compensation as everyone else in terms of
I was
change.
confused with the two numbers when I saw the sheet
Sure.
that you gave me.
Yeah.
with everybody's compensation.
I think Jody Normando had that same question, so you're.
I still don't understand it, so you might make it a little clearer.
Sure, I mean, Hannah can help as well, but.
I think it's just there's a bunch of stipends with a salary, and we just combine them all to create the salary, to take the stipends out of the picture.
But he's always been in charge of driver's ed and PE. So why?
Nothing's changed with the job responsibilities or the fund or the financial max number that he's being paid. It's just that the way that it's being shown on paper looks differently because it was very confusing before.
So you got a different stipend, and then you just combine them rather than pay separately.
Yeah.
3 buckets to 1.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was in 3 different spots in the budget before, driver's ed and PE?
That's right.
Okay, that's finally gotten through my head, thank you.
So there wasn't a lot of clarity for me as I was looking through the athletic budget. And so I got to the boys' basketball coach, and I saw a salary of $28,784. And my first thought was I got to come out of retirement.
So that's for the whole cadre of teams.
Coaches.
JV,
Including BAMS.
varsity, middle school, and any assistants that might be there. So that's the whole group, several people.
Which I came to the conclusion of. But then I saw that the girls was only 20,000, and then I thought of Title IX.
Yeah, and it does have to do with the number of years of service, the turnover, but they're all paid from the same schedule. It is part of the collective bargaining agreement. So, a varsity boys coach is paid exactly the same as a varsity girls. So, but they do earn different amounts depending on their service.
And Frank, can I just add also that it's also based on interest, and so like this year we had to add a 3rd basketball coach for the boys because we were cutting 14 kids from the team, and there was money in the budget for a B team, and so the B team was put into play, and that's happened for a few years with boys.
Well, I can
The
remember,
interest isn't there for girls.
I can remember back in the early 2000s where I did a program in the middle school for all the kids that were cut. Anybody who was cut, I told the principal, I would take them. I didn't care if there was 8 or there was 20, and I think I ended up with 24.
Are you offering?
I would do it again because there should be a place for kids.
Yeah.
To keep them doing something after school, and being ostracized because you didn't make the team is not a good thing.
So can I just
I will volunteer for
Excuse
that
me, one
without
second.
a stipend.
Can I just clarify what Hannah just said? That the 14 were not cut. You set up a new team.
Correct.
Okay.
Because
so that's
we're agreeing that we want to have students participating after school
Absolutely.
activities and being involved. Yeah.
Absolutely. So perhaps Mr. DeGray, you could present your credentials to Hannah Parker.
As the superintendent, I coached him.
Very well aware. Very good coach.
And I'm looking at the lacrosse coach. Is the athletic director the lacrosse coach?
Yes.
And when we go and hire a new athletic director, I would hope that he is not coaching anything and doing his job and watching all the other teams and the activities that are going on and not coaching, because he's really not doing his job in the season that he's coaching, and actually should get a reduction in pay to make up for what he's being paid here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Normando.
Jody Normando, from Dummerston. I have a lot of questions. I don't know how many you want to hear, but first of all, I want to thank Frank. Once again, he's answered my questions when I asked him what the administration people were, what their salaries were, because I got really confused looking at the budget and they were just all lumped together with everything else and you couldn't tell. Second of all here, I've been doing a lot of figuring, and I've been looking at the cost of living. And I'm thinking that in Vermont, and particularly around here, there are a lot of people who are collecting Social Security, us white-haired people. And that is based on the cost of living, which is 2.5% nationally, which is a lot less than what we are giving for raises for a lot of positions, not the teachers' positions, but a lot of positions. The cost of living in Vermont, 24-25, is 1.037. I mean, that's pretty low compared to what we're giving for salaries. So I would hope that everybody would take a look at that. Times are really hard right now for a lot of people, as everybody knows. A lot of homeless people, a lot of people with mental conditions, you know, it's just really, really rough. And I would hope that you would take into consideration some of these cuts that are well over the 2.5 or the 1.037. I've asked about a couple of things before. I've asked why BAMS has an athletic director, and did the athletic director work in the smaller schools? Frank said, and I didn't know this, and if it is, you know, if this is what's happening, it's probably okay, that Putney and Dummerston, who have their 7th and 8th graders still in the school, are welcome to be part of the BAMS teams. And I didn't know that, and if that is true, that makes a difference in having a BAMS AD.
It is true, yeah.
And I'll also add Dummerston and Putney have their own ADs also.
They do?
They do, yep.
Who?
I worked with them yesterday.
Who is Dummerston's AD?
Kim Lean.
She's the
And Maddie Rollins.
She's the PE
Putney's.
teacher.
Yep, and she has a stipend as an AD.
Oh, she does have a stipend. All right, I didn't know.
That's
she
my
did.
understanding anyway.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know. And
I don't know if you can hear me. This is Julianne.
hi, Julianne.
Hey, Jody. Hey, I'm home, recovering from illness. Yes, so we have both Putney and I, we have, I think for John too, it's John's PE teacher, and Kim Lane, who handles our AD position. So she coordinates all the sports and does an incredible job. And actually helps out too with the coordination with BAMS and Putney. Like that's one of the things that she and the BAMS AD and the Putney AD do together, is kind of coordinate that each season.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
The other thing, I've got it right here, that really, and we've talked about this at the last meeting, in the capital fund is $400,000 for this grandstand. And I would hope that the board and the administration would take that out of the capital fund. That grandstand, as we talked before, and I remember that Christina was sitting next to me at the meeting at Academy, and she read an article from the Reformer, because there was some discussion as to whether who was supposed to pay for that. Because the group of people who brought it to the board said that it would not cost the taxpayers 1 penny. And there's other information out there, and I will get that information if I have to, and to present it to the board and the administration. I don't think it's where we should be spending our money. I know that Hannah would like to have an outdoor program or whatever, but I think, you know, you're putting the shoe or the cart before the horse. You want to keep it, so you're going to find a job for it. And I think that should go. And at the very end of our conversation, Frank said, and it's got, what's that bad paint? Lead paint. And I think that ought to go. And I know it's quote listed as historic, But we were told back then that what you do is take a picture of it and tear it down, and that's fine. So I would love to have that taken out and that piece of property used for something else, and it may be used for athletic, it may be a pickleball court, or you know, tag football, or whatever you want to do, but it's not something that I think needs to be in our district right now. It's huge, and back in the day when baseball was the thing, and many people would come to watch it, is quite different than it is today. So I'd like that out, and I do not have a copy of the capital plan, Frank, so I would like to have that. Yeah, thank you.
Before we go into Tenny Field, I'm gonna put a pause, and we're gonna come right back to Tenny Field and to this moment. We're gonna take a 10-minute stretch break. Okay, so whatever questions you have that are resonant with you, jot them down so you don't forget them, please. 10-minute stretch break, and so it is 7:22, we're gonna come back at 7:32. Thank you. Since we have veered into issues having to do with the capital plan, once again, I'm just gonna put Tenny Field on hold and ask Frank to do a brief overview of the capital plan, and then we'll come back to Tenny Field very specifically.
Capital plan is on its
Okay,
way down,
thank you.
but it got lost somewhere.
Before we, can I ask
Yes.
one more question?
I said the capital plan was on its way
Yes,
down.
Jessica, yes.
Was that
So I have
it?
a couple questions.
You got one?
So I'm curious what the positions that we are not filling through attrition, what are those positions?
Yeah, the 10 positions are fortunately none that we're actually doing a layoff of a current employee. They're all situations where we had either a retirement or it may have been a proposed position that we didn't hire. And then we're planning on not budgeting and funding in fiscal year 26. So it varies across pretty much all of our buildings. For example, Academy, we had a to be hired in counseling. We hadn't filled the position and we've removed it from the fiscal year 26 proposal. There was also part-time custodial service at our Academy school. In the high school, we had a retirement in science department, and based on enrollment and our current staff, we are not planning on replacing that. We've also in the high school reorganized the collegiate high school and counseling department, and as a result of that, we are reducing a position in those two areas. Also, we had a part-time reduction in the security department in the high school. At the Guilford, we had a part-time social worker position that was reduced. At the middle school, planning room para, and at Oak Grove, an academic support position, and at Green Street, a foreign language part-time. We still have foreign language, but part of the position was reduced. And then in the Career Center, we had a culinary arts and a machine design. Those positions are reduced, again, based on changes in enrollment and changes in staffing.
Thank you. And then my other question was asked at the top of the meeting about the federal funding freeze and how that may implicate our budget. My kind of follow-up question to that is, when you say we only get about $1 million or and change in federal funding, are you accounting for funds that pass through the state from the federal level, or are there none that pass through the state?
So we're not like the Head Start Early Education Services, their funding comes directly from the U.S. Department of Health to them, not through the state. So that kind of funding is more vulnerable to this kind of a freeze. But our funding does come through the state, and again, at this point, there's been no indication that there's reason for concern.
Okay, so the breakdowns on the budget that say state, those don't account for federal funds that pass through the state?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful, thank you.
Thank you. Ruby's hand was up and then Tim.
Just to kind of jump off of something that Jessica asked about the reductions, because this is something that I've questions I've fielded from community members around the particular ones that will impact the social emotional well-being of our kids. So when you list those, when you use the word counselor, I know that there's academic counseling and then there's, potentially other types of counseling. So the two, I think there were 2 counselors and 1 social worker at the various schools. Can you speak to your perspective in terms of how will those reductions impact the social emotional well-being of the kids at those schools?
Well, I can start, and then Mark may have some comments. But when we look at that area, so it's student support services, and then we look at recommended ratios, students to those positions. We are heavily staffed across the state, and we still will be even after these reductions. For example, the PICUS report, a national research firm, the Vermont legislature engaged them to do a study for the state of Vermont. What is an adequate education? What's the cost of an adequate education? They had a statistic, I believe, I don't know if folks remember, but I believe it's 500 at the high school, 300 students per counselor. We're way, way below that in terms of utilization of that position. So that, from just a fiscal point of view, it's an area that we have invested heavily in, and we still are invested heavily in. In addition to counselors, we have social workers. In addition to social workers, we have clinicians. So we are very heavy in supporting our students in that area. I don't know if there's other comments.
No, I think you nailed it. It's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning as well. Adding positions in the beginning of the pandemic in terms of recovery, we knew from the very beginning that we couldn't sustain that new staffing, and that over time we would have to be strategic in looking at attrition and how we balanced the needs. So we've worked really closely with building principals, and I feel extremely confident that this budget meets the needs of all of our students based on the work that we've done at each individual site. And we do exceed all standards that Frank was referring to.
Yeah, just to underscore the crazy times we live in, I was at the Early Education Services Leadership Council a few days ago, and Deb Gass announced bad news and good news. The bad news is that our President Trump issued an executive order to cut Head Start. The good news is that this has such broad bipartisan support that she doesn't feel it's ever going to happen. But he actually issued an executive order to cut one of the most successful programs in the country.
Okay, thank you. Martha.
Can I go back to what I was gonna question before the 10-minute break?
Yes, but are you questioning something about the capital plan?
Part 1, no. Part 1, no. Part 2, yes.
Okay, so part 2, let's hold. Part 1, absolutely.
Okay, I did want to echo what Jody had said, and it's interesting that we're sitting beside each other because I too have concerns about the non-union staff, administration, and their salaries and their percentages of increase. And I mentioned this a few months ago, meetings ago, and it was justified that a lot of this is what the percentage is within the state of Vermont, or this is what certain level is paid for another position. Given what Jody said with the 2% increase for cost of living and then the non-union staff raises, I think it's important to keep in mind to the average taxpayer, because that's what they will look at is, this is what this person is making, this is the percentage of increase they got for their raise, and find that a hard pill to swallow. That's what I'd like to just bring up and ask you to please look at that in your future months and years to keep it within reason.
Thank you.
All right, we'll turn to the capital plan, and then we can address some of the specific questions. So this.
Yes, wait 1 second, I'm sorry.
I have 2 questions about the capital plan. Should I wait?
Yes, if you don't mind, because we just want to do an overview of the capital plan, and then we'll get into the specifics, and I think we'll start with Kenny Field. Okay?
That'd be great.
Right, thank you.
All right, so this document here is our capital plan for fiscal year 26. You got a nice picture of the high school campus on the front page there, and the Dummerston School, as well as the Guilford School. The page 3 of the guiding principles. Basically, we're saying that we are fully implementing the board policy around policy E14 around climate friendly, energy efficient, and sustainable systems. What you see on the bulleted form here, I'll start from the bottom here just for some highlights in the more recent window of time. Fiscal year 25, we just finished a really substantial improvement to the Guilford School for most of their window improvements, which is a huge thermal efficiency gain, as well as better lighting for kids learning at the desk level. Window, treatments are so much more advanced than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mentioned the Oak Grove system. That was about a $2.8 million project that was well overdue. Fortunately, we had some funding assistance for us, and we just went through our first 25 below evening, and the reports were very favorable that our heat pump technology, which has come a long way, held up just fine. We've gotten very favorable feedback from students, teachers, and our principal about that investment. That was a very significant innovation in that is not the norm, but I think it will become the norm. It's more efficient than, lower cost operating than our oil plant. It's 100% renewable in that most of our energy in Vermont here either comes from a solar array or Hydro-Quebec. And certainly it's what our environmental conservation folks are recommending for the road ahead, 100% electric. So that was our major investment the last couple of years. 2023, we spent nearly $1 million here at the Brattleboro Union High School. It's 20 years after the bond that brought in this nice facility, but all of the components that push air and ventilation and heat around were basically obsolete. This is about a 350,000 square foot building, and we've just gone through and replaced those, and so much of that was prompted through again, the federal money that helped address indoor air quality standards. And then 2022, we did similar upgrades to most of our buildings for indoor air quality and control. Dummerston, we replaced an old oil boiler plant with biofuel, the renewable fuel pellets. That's been running very well. We also improved the distribution of heat and ventilation in that school. In Putney, we had a kind of a hard struggle with an early attempt at a wood chip system that just became a huge headache. And in 2019, I was able to bring in the Froling Energy systems through a bid process, and they've been running terrific since then. 2018, we removed the Guilford oil system, replaced with biofuel. Mark led the major renovation of the Green Street School when he was principal there. Again, one of those old 1929, it was originally a coal-fired plant, then converted to oil. We replaced that with biofuel systems, and we actually used the old coal bin as the wood chip storage. So not only the heating, but new flooring materials, lots of quality improvements for the Green Street School. And then I'll just mention one other. I was very pleased that in 2014, when I first started here in the district, I went right to work on solar capacity and purchasing solar produced energy. And it took a couple of years, but we were able to secure a contract with a project that was at Windham Solid Waste, 5 megawatt solar array, where we're acquiring about 80% of our energy through that field at a probably better than 25% discount to what Green Mountain Power rate is. And then maybe one other comment, you can see there are other improvements, but Academy School was also another biofuel retrofit in 2015 that I did have many funding partners for that project as well. So this capital plan represents all of our school buildings having unplugged the fossil fuel as a primary fuel source, and we're on our natural, local, wood chip and pellet fuel source with a much better air quality and far more advanced control systems in all of our buildings now. So that's a quick overview, and then when we look at the actual spending plan, I briefly reviewed the summary page with you that's part of the main budget package, so I won't go over that again. But the way this report is organized in the detail format, this is on the website as well. So on the website you can blow up the screen a little bit more, and it's much easier to read. But what we're looking at is for each school site, all the major components of any building and campus is on the far left-hand grid of the report. And then what we have is when was the asset installed? What's the expected useful life? Those are the columns up there at top. And then this is like a 50-year plan, but we can only look at 5 or 6 years, so that's what you're seeing here, fiscal year 22 through 27. But what this represents is, like for example, that boiler was put in a service at the high school 2003. We estimated a 25-year life, so 2003 plus 25 is 2028, right? That's the math over there on the long-term replacement date. Okay, on the far right. And then we have our notes primarily for whoever is in my seat and Ricky Aether over here or Robert Clark, who's our Director of Facilities. It's an archive of what was done when, and so whoever is here has a very good inventory of when assets were deployed, what's the useful life, when we should have funding prepared, engineering specifications, a bid process to replace the asset. So that's the format of this report. Each, as I say, each site, it's organized the same way. So at the bottom of the page, we have page 6 is the high school, which includes the Career Center and the Brattleboro area middle school. So that's page through page 10. And this is where we'll come back to the Tenney Field improvement and any other questions folks might have. On page 10, it kind of summarizes. So for this facility, we're proposing the 1.6 million for 2026. That is down from 2.2 million you see in this current year. And how are we going to fund it? Well, in the operating budget, there's $1 million in the operating, school operations function 2600 to help fund that 1.6 million. That's the lion's share. We're hoping that we will get $50,000 from Efficiency Vermont for some of the lighting LED retrofits. So that's those two funding sources. You see subtotal funding sources $1,050,000. That requires us to draw $560,000 if we're going to spend 1.6 million. And in this site, it still leaves us with a capital reserve for future projects. So page 11 are the 3 Brattleboro town schools, including some of our smaller schools like Canal Street and Esteville. So that goes through page 17. And then Dummerston is on page 18. Guilford is on page 21. And then Putney is on page 23. And as I say, each site identifies critical assets, generally that are going to cost more than $15,000 to maintain in terms of any of its components. And then, as I say, we assess a useful life and then a period when we better be prepared to replace to keep our learning environments good for students and healthy and safe. So, questions?
Okay, so let's go back to the issue having to do with Tenney Field and concerns about Tenney Field. Martha, is this about Tenney Field?
It's that $50,000 question about the telephones. There was no information given.
So what page are you on?
I believe that's page 7.
Page 7 in the high school.
Yes.
All right. And you want to know about replacing the telephone in fiscal year 2026. Yeah, so here at the high school, the telephones are still a critical system, and we have to replace it based on useful life. And what else would you like to know?
I would like to know, is it in the office or telephones in each classroom? Is it BAMs, WRCC?
So as a central, sure, as a central campus where all of our systems are connected, so it would be throughout the building. But I don't know, Ricky, if that's a fair question for you, or is this a different?
It's more of an IT department thing, but,
okay.
But definitely it's campus-wide.
Campus-wide,
for sure.
yeah.
So.
But we can give you some more information on it. But
No, it would have been helpful to just have that noted in the column to the right.
Sure. Yeah. There is a lot of projects, and we do the best we can to put a note on every single one of them, but there's, as you can see, there's hundreds of projects. Most of them are noted.
Okay. Again, I would like to get to Tenny Field and not put that off. Ruby, you have your hand up?
I don't have I have a different, I don't have a non-tenant.
Okay, I really want to respect the ordering of issues.
Could I ask for, I actually don't know Ricky. Hi, Ricky. How are you?
Hi.
But I'm wondering, Frank, if you could identify people who you might be referring to who are in the room.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I should have done that. Ricky Aether, he's our Director of Facilities for the Brattleboro Union High School Band's Career Center campus. He works closely with Robert Clark, our Director of Facilities. And then we have Adam Wade, is that right?
Yes.
With Friends of Tenny, and Scott Noren, also Friends of Tenny, but also a science teacher here, right? Yeah.
Thank you, good point, thank you very much. All right, again, I want to go back to Tenny Field. I do see a board member with a hand up. Yes, Sean.
Well, I think as Frank has completed his overview of the capital plan, and I know you want to go to Tenny, but I am so impressed with the care all the way from 2003, which is actually the year I joined the District 6 board, up till today, and all the things that have been done, all the bullet points. And then when we pick up on when the district was unified, which is 2019, and there was so much emphasis on, from Tim and Thomas Nolan and other people, to make sure that we were doing everything possible to get away from fossil fuels. So this is a document that really represents a huge commitment and a unbelievable amount of resources that especially Frank Rucker has brought to the table. So, before we jump on to Tenny, I would just like to say how impressive this document is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian Reamer.
I'm sorry, Brian Reamer from Guilford.
That's okay.
What is the teal colored cells, what does that signify?
Oh yes, good question. I wish it wasn't so dark. On the website, again, it's easier to see through that, but those are primarily grant-funded projects. Most of it is the ESSER funding. In some instances, there's another co-grant funded, but that's the significance of it.
Mm-hmm. Good, okay, all right. Tenny Field, we're going to Tenny Field.
Tenny Field.
Tenny Field, okay, Tenny Field, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I bet not many people call you that, Madam Chairwoman.
Sounded
As
very
they
nice.
should.
Thank you.
$125,000 for Tenny Field. And the first question I would ask is how long have those bleachers been in that condition? 10 years? Longer?
Oh, yeah.
And if it was that important to restore those bleachers, why wasn't it done before now? And if it's a historic site, I would think that there might be grant funding available to do that. So I'm going to ask a courageous board member to make a motion to cut this $125,000 out of this capital plan and have the administration look into potential grant money for a historic baseball grandstand, see if there's any available. So one more year of waiting to get these bleachers restored. And I would agree with Mrs. Normando that I've gone by here and stopped for baseball games, and attendance is in a pittance. And to spend $125,000 or more at this time, in my estimation, is not a good expenditure. And at some point, you have to go, you know what? I think we're right. I think we should hold off on that and see if there's federal grant money around. for a historic site. And I'm not sure why it hasn't been done before, or maybe it was, and I don't know about it, but I implore you to remove this from the capital plan and have the administration look into grant funding. I think that's a reasonable request, given that these bleachers have been in this condition for the last 10 to 15 years. Thank you.
More than that.
Tim Macio.
Yeah, this is related to Mr. DeGray's request. It may disappoint you. But first, I want to start by thanking the public, especially Martha Noyes and Jody Normandale, for their persistent engagement in shaping this budget. Public participation is crucial. It fosters transparency, accountability, and ensures that our budget aligns with community priorities. When community members, students, staff, and other stakeholders are involved, they're more likely to support the outcomes and promote fiscally responsible, equitable decisions. I also want to thank and commend our finance director and the finance committee for their efforts this year to present budget information more clearly using graphs and tables. The improved clarity highlights how the proposed budget supports academic performance, district goals, and safe and healthy school environments. As one of the WSESD's primary responsibilities, fiscal oversight is an ongoing task, never truly finished. Only paused, Mr. DeGray, only paused to meet critical deadlines. And tonight is a deadline. Tonight, the board must decide on a $65 million budget. That said, discussions around fiscal matters and capital expenditures do not end here. In the coming months, I urge the board to tackle controversial expenditures head-on and explore ways to make the budget presentations more concise, focused, and accessible. We can learn so much from other districts like Burlington's to engage more family, staff, students, and community members in these vital discussions. And so I urge us to do this with intentionality. So I'm not prepared to make a motion on Tenny tonight, but I urge the board to continue these discussions and not end it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Could I speak a little bit more to Tenny?
Let's hear a couple of more comments. Is this about Tenny Field? Okay, so a couple more comments if you don't mind, because we've been sitting on this for a while. Martha.
I again would like to support Mr. DeGray's information, suggestion, and motion. As a resident and taxpayer, we're seriously considering taking off the table the $125,000 for 1 year. I mean, here are your taxpayers that are loyally here.
I will third that or second that or whatever, because of the fact that we were told many years ago, and I forgot what year that reformer article that Christina mentioned, but many, many years ago, we were told that the Friends of Tenny were going to take care of all the costs, and it wasn't going to cost the community anything. And now it's fallen on the community. And I think it's, right now, it looks like it's over 400,000, but I know it's going to be more before it's through. It'll be 500,000 or more. And I think there's other things, particularly education of our students, before you come to something like that.
And it just led me to think of the number of students who are actually accessing that property is minute compared to a classroom or education that goes on throughout the 180 days of the school year. I think that's something to look at also. That's a lot of money for a short amount of time and a small amount of students.
I'm just gonna keep on going around a bit. Okay, Ricky, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just need to speak on this just a little bit. It's been closed down for quite a while, and there's reasons for that, ADA compliance and things like that. And then there was, a couple years ago, we decided to go out to bid. We got approval from the board and the public, and we put money in our budget. We decided to go out to bid as a joint project. And that was kind of what was gonna happen last year. And it came out that it was gonna cost way too much money. So we've already invested a lot of money in the design and some other things. We have open contracts with contractors right now to take care of the lead situation. We have open contract with roofers to repair the roof, which those are things that have to be done regardless, okay? Because it's just sitting there. And we all know we can't have that flaking lead just blowing around. Can't have the roof leaking and getting down. We have 3-phase power that's underneath that supplies power to the lights. We've worked closely with Team Tenny, and we have a plan in place. Some of this money here is just kind of place setter stuff to stay rolling and move forward on this. We have a very nice field out there. We just invested a lot of money into it. I've been here for 5 years. I've been in the district for 16. I've been asked to pursue outdoor learning space. Well, outdoor learning space is difficult. There's no areas around campus to build something. Even if we did build something, we have to amend a stormwater permit on top of that, and that costs big money. So those are all factors as well. So try to do two things and utilize it in that way. There's a roof over it. It can be shaded. It would be used during the school day, used during athletics. It could be used for other things, a band concert outside at some point. It could be used for, it just opens doors for many opportunities out there. I've had, not directly, but through somebody, upstart semi-pro baseball team has already reached out to us about the potentially using our field. That could be very good for our school and our students and our community. So that's a positive factor. And then the fact that if we tear it down, those numbers that you see in that budget go way up. So what do we think? We want it to sit out there and continue to deteriorate and be a major eyesore to our campus? Or should we fix it up? It's a historic grandstand. It's 80 years old. It's still in pretty good shape. The biggest problems is ADA compliance. That's the biggest problems. And obviously the lead paint. But that's an open contract of $78,000. It's gonna be this spring. It's already open. They're gonna come in, they're gonna scrape it, they're gonna follow all the proper procedures. They're gonna put brand new paint on it, and then that's gonna allow us to move forward. Team Tenny is already in the works right now with donations and volunteer work, and so, but we can't put a number on that figure or what that's gonna be as far as what's gonna come in. I've had a local business owner in town reach out to me, and they're very excited. And they want to do fundraising. I've put them on hold for right now because we need to know that we're gonna do this, but they're very excited. So that's just kind of what I have to say about that as far as that goes, and why we're trying to move forward and doing this job. If we don't do it, the hundreds of thousands that we've put into it already is just a waste of money, but it has to be done. Roof has to get fixed. It's leaking everywhere. We have, again, 3-phase power underneath that thing, so it has to be protected. and it has lead paint on it. So our athletes are close in that vicinity. The public is close to that vicinity during those events, and so that has to be addressed. So again, we're hoping, we're gonna just continue to chip away at this. We have all the construction documents already. We've paid for those through an engineer. And my goal is to just continue to chip away, working with Team Tenny. We've had lots of meetings and they're ready. We just have to know we can do it. We'll get the lumber donations, we'll get some businesses throwing money at it, and we just can't put numbers on it. That's where we're at as far as that goes. So
I have a question for you. You said that if it's torn down, the budget increases.
sure, it would be over $500 million to tear that down, guaranteed. Because then also you have to put another structure there because there is electrical panels and phase power underneath that structure.
All right, thank you very much.
For our,
Thank you.
so.
Thank you. Okay, Ruby?
I see in the capital plan, under the grandstand line item, a reference to in July 2023, an emphasis on outdoor learning space was added. So I guess I would like to, I'd like to understand what that vision is.
Sure.
Because the historical, I understand the historical aspects that were laid out by, the earlier work of Friends of Tenny. I understand the need, to abate the lead. But the thing, those are all kind of details that are in the past. The thing that I feel like has been forward-looking is how could this structure be envisioned for like positive use on our campus? And I don't really physically understand what that means. Like where are those? Is it Hannah and I were talking, is it like underneath the back? Is it in the actual grandstand? Like if we are envisioning, how far out would it be once we start before we can utilize it? I'd like to have definitively hear from the administration that vision of having classroom space is an important kind of underpinning of what we're thinking. That would have an impact on my thinking around whether or not to keep this investment or, consider what's being proposed.
Sure.
And just from the classroom perspective, it's every year I send out an email to all staff saying, here's the places you can go because it's really hot in your classrooms, it's like 90 degrees. And we have 0 spaces outside that students can go right now because nothing's covered. So you're sitting in the blaring sun anywhere you are outside on campus. This, if it was done in a way that allowed for outdoor learning, would absolutely be like a space that could be utilized for that.
And
So
how many classrooms would be contained within this grandstand?
And I think it's a little bit like Ruby was saying, I don't have a great picture in my mind of what this is gonna look like. I can say like the auditorium right now, we usually can get 4 classrooms of students in there at a time during hot times, so I would envision this being similar to that.
Okay.
But
So it's close to that.
And this
It would be separated out.
Got
You have the opportunity where we would be putting power outlets in there, so in areas where teachers could put a table, the kids kind of sit in an auditorium setting, you can stand there, plug in, Wi-Fi access would be out there. There's opportunities to have some fans blowing around or something, but it is shaded. It's shaded and it could be rainy and cool, and you could be out there if you wanted to hustle out there quickly. It could be hot and sunny and it'd still be cooler under there because it is all shaded, so.
So going to the other part of Ruby's question that I heard was, what are we looking at in terms of a time frame when this would be fully functional?
Sure, so it's really hard to put a time frame on, that's why you see a 3-year number in there.
Okay.
Because it's hard for that, but we feel like there's a realistic chance with some starting money to play with and Team Tenny's efforts, and then we get the fundraising off of the ground, that we could very well have this open and usable by the fall.
By which fall?
This coming fall.
This coming fall?
But you gotta remember that relies on some funding to start with, but also the soliciting of lumber donations, the business that wants to do fundraising,
Okay.
and in those efforts, and that really relies on a lot of that. So if we don't get there then we get back after it again in the spring when we're allowed to, or weather permitting into November.
Okay.
And just keep moving forward. My idea again was to once we had the construction documents and we knew that we weren't going to be able to use ESSER funding because of the timeline and the amount that it was going to cost, we redesigned everything and we went back to the drawing board. And we know what we need to do. And I feel pretty strong that it's very reasonable.
I recall at the last board meeting, and maybe I'm incorrect, that this first year commitment of money would actually be a 3-year commitment.
Well, I think as Ricky said, that if we get authorization to proceed with this capital plan, Ricky will get, and he'll be able to get actual commitments. Without the board's endorsement of the plan, it's just gonna
Sit there.
go sideways, which would be very unfortunate. But it does seem very realistic that we can utilize that facility after several years of it being inaccessible because the walkway and ramp that was a legacy of a different era. I'm not sure which inspector came in and said, you gotta rope that off. You can't allow people to use that. It doesn't meet ADA requirements. So when that happened, I believe it was like 2019, we then went into the COVID delay, and then we came out of that with the commitment from Friends of Tenney, and then as Ricky has spelled out, the architect with an actual plan. You can't get much of a commitment when people don't know what you're trying to build. We have the schematics, we've got the materials, we've got the stormwater permitting resolved. We have the design for the handicap ramp. We're ready to go. It's just a matter of this approval tonight. And I do believe it's realistic that Friends of Tenney, between labor and material, is equivalent of at least $50,000, and it could be more than that because of the folks that are interested in this. These are a lot of local folks. Sean remembers the UHS board and subcommittee was overrun with advocates for this project. 2017, we were ready to flatten it. The board, along with myself at the table, didn't hear the advocacy for the project, and we're like, okay, it's served its useful life, let's move on. And a whole lot of folks came to the board meetings to finance and said, that's an unacceptable erasure of our history. There's lots to be shared and developed and so on, and that's why we're here. But finally, I think we are at the cusp of getting back to full utilization of that facility.
So I have a follow-up question. You stated that with this first tier of investment, that facility would be up and running in the fall. So I'm wondering, why is there a need to consider the same investment in the second year and the third year?
Those can be flexible based on progress that we make. But the first thing we really need to do if we're gonna address the situation is deal with the lead and remediate the lead from that building. Like right now, we can't build a ramp, we can't put stands on the grandstand because we can't use it. We've been told we can't use it, we have to deal with the lead issue first. And by moving forward with this plan, we would be able to do that starting in March.
So there are all sorts of follow-up questions. How long would it take to remediate the lead?
That's starting in the early spring.
That is starting.
And that will be done, I mean, if all goes well, 3 weeks later.
I see,
Okay, so that's the timeline there.
Okay.
And so I just wanna backtrack for a second. So he had brought up the stormwater situation. That hasn't been dealt with yet because That really can't get dealt with until after the thing is in place and you can see what's there. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we don't affect that as much as possible. By doing different things, whether it's the gapping between the boards or the type of material that we use. The water has to be able to flow through, right? That's the idea for that. But I'd like to point out a couple other things too. One, back in 2023, the AOE did a facility assessment on all of our schools here. And that was listed in here as 81.9% priority rate to take care of. So that was part of the reason why we continued on trying to do something with this. And as I said, to knock it down, lead paint on there. If you wanted to knock that down, the EPA is going to get involved, and we're going to start stirring everything up. And boy, that's going to be some big bucks.
We're going to take a few more questions on this. Brian?
Thank you. I think this is mostly for Hannah. Can you give us some examples of the types of classes that might be held there, or the types of lessons that people envision, or what they're excited about using the facility for?
I would say that we haven't had a huge conversation as a school community, but the classes that tend to move around would be, I'm gonna look at Scott just because I think it's mostly not science just because of lab work. But I mean, like foreign language, music, art could or couldn't, depending upon what they're working on, English, social studies. I mean, like a lot of most subjects can move around the building or outside the building pretty easily.
You've got some very hot math classrooms on the fourth floor.
And science and MCL.
Right.
I mean, there's
Right.
this.
The kids talk about the heat.
It's brutal.
Okay.
Yeah, I can
Thank
speak
you.
more to the history of the plan for that. So, the idea to use the Tenny Field grandstand as an outdoor classroom stems actually from a BOHS faculty meeting shortly after we came back to, partial student participation in the school, almost full faculty, where, we were here, I was here actually 5 days a week, other staff were here every other day, and the students were here 2 days a week. So we could get back into school, and we had tents outside, but everyone knew that was not a long-term solution. So I believe it was Michelle Page, a math teacher, and also Rebecca Kirsten, who's an English teacher who also runs the theater department, who stood up in the faculty meeting and said, we need some type of permanent space. And ideas were being bounced around, all right? And the idea that coalesced among the faculty and the administration at the time was, we have the Tenny Field grandstand. That would be an ideal permanent spot. You don't have to worry about, the tents, and the fact that, you have to put them up and take them down. And we spend a lot of money on tents around here, to be honest. So that's where the idea of using Tenny Field grandstand as an outdoor classroom came to be. And Hannah is correct, especially here on the second floor, especially the math wing, and one side of the science wing where my room is. It is very common for it to be pushing 90, in the early spring, late spring, early fall, that's common. We've figured out ways to deal with it, but sometimes it's just nice to go outside, and do a lesson in the fresh air. And the grandstand is ideal because it has the roof, and I know this school property very well because I'm actually the natural sciences teacher. I teach a wildlife class, I teach an earth science class, I travel around this campus all the time. There is no other place really to put an outdoor classroom. Where some of the elementary schools during and after COVID, they had space, they built these, but we don't have it here, So this is, getting an additional use, out of historic grandstand. Now, to my knowledge, in the past, it wasn't used for that, but it was used for other things. It was used to where it used to have the high school graduation. It was used for concerts. There's no reason why it could not be used for plays. There's so many possible uses for that historic structure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been talking about this for, well over 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm not shutting it down. I see hands up, so I'm not shutting it down. I did see another board member's hand up, and then I will go to community members. Jessica.
Yes, thank you. Jessica Everleth from Dummerston. I'm curious what effort has been made to fundraise for this. I see looks like there was some grant funding in 25, but specifically private fundraising, lead abatement fundraising, and historic preservation. What efforts have been made to be creative about this type of?
Yeah, we've been very successful in gaining grant funding for a variety of projects over the years, millions of dollars of grant funds. And we did pursue grant funds for this project. And the trouble, particularly with any kind of federal money, is the first priority is all of the requirements. So as we just heard, the ADA, the lead abatements, and when we lead with that, which is essential, the cost of the project goes way up, as opposed to us doing it as Ricky has outlined ourselves through absolutely certified procedures. So, for example, we thought we would have $100,000 in ESSER money for this project. We applied for it. It was under consideration, but as Ricky had mentioned, when the bid came back for that project, it was like $2 million. And that's, when you have grant funding, usually there's a lot of criteria you have to meet. And that was way beyond the scope of what we could afford. So, but the reality is, as you've heard, and we have representatives from Friends of Tenney, we have a tremendous gift right here in our local community as far as a very capable funding source aside from the local budget. So I think we're very fortunate, but we just have to engage in a partnership, and it requires moving forward with endorsing the project tonight, or at some point relatively soon. I really do think that that's going to yield, based on my own conversation and history with the interested parties. I think it's going to yield a very meaningful contribution to the cost. Back to Mr. DeGray's point. We always have to budget the cost of a project, and then we show funding, how we're going to pay for it in the document as I outlined. We can't be pursuing grant funding when there's no commitment to a project in a plan. No funder is going to say, "Oh yeah, here's a commitment, and I hope you guys move forward with it." But so we have to have commitment in order to attract serious partners.
Okay, thank you. Martha.
Yeah, it's looking like this will move forward, but I was also wondering if it would be worth looking at how the students that are involved with the Career Center could take part in this long process. I mean, I know there are certifications and rules and that, not necessarily to save money, but to give them some type of an experience within their.
So I'm going to say that's a sidebar, and that goes beyond whether Tenney is funded or not. So I'd like to not go in that direction this evening. I'm just concerned about timing.
I just want to put it out.
So, but I appreciate that, and I appreciate that comment, because we want to engage the community. Jody.
Excuse me, I have two questions, and I have quite a bit of concern, because back when this started, Tenney was going to go out and they were going to get all this money from all the merchants downtown, and they were going to just get all this money and it wasn't going to cost us anything. Nothing has happened from that time until now, when this subject has come up at the board meeting again. I want to know from Ricky, you made a comment as to about you've already done so much to fix it and put so much money into it. And I would like to know what you have already done and to fix it and put the money into it.
Sure. So just to backtrack just for a second. So, on some of the history that I know about the situation, I know at one time there was a former administrator and a former facility manager that were wanting to knock that down. Okay. I don't remember the time frame of that because I was at another school at that time. COVID again changed a lot of that outlook on that and why we decided to go a different direction and why we're looking at it in a different way. So there's that. As far as the money spent already, can you ask that one real quick again?
Well, you had made some comment about all this kind of money had been spent already or been whatever to
Sure.
fix it up, and I don't understand what that meant.
Sure. So we paid an engineer to engineer a idea that we had, and we
Who
had
did? Who paid?
the taxpayers. Right? It was budgeted, and approved ahead of time and all that stuff. We had approval to move forward with looking into this and seeing what it was going to take to do this and prepare further down. And as Frank said, we were going to utilize semester funds and things like that. And it came back outrageous. And it came back outrageous because of timing, in my opinion. And this is my opinion, okay? Just doing this for a long time. Very large project with a bunch of contractors that were really already booked up at that point. And think about a job that's being approved in March and you're trying to have it start in July. Most large contractors are already booked for that time, you know. So we'll throw a number at it, and if it sticks, we'll take the job, right? So we paid for an engineer to do that. We modified after we realized we were kind of wishful thinking on a lot of different things, and then. As I said, we have an open contract currently with Melanson Roofing to do the roof over. We have an open contract with Stebbins Painting. We went out to bid on that and to take care of the lead and put some fresh paint on it so we can continue to move forward on making the improvements needed so it can open and be used by our students, staff, and community.
And this has all been done with approval of the school board and
Correct.
administration?
With past capital planned money. It's actually in the capital plan. You can see, I believe it's a total of 150 around there, correct?
Yeah, Jody, if you look
one-
at page
I'm on here.
8, you'll see 40,000
Yeah,
is
40,000.
what Ricky was just describing for the engineering design and some assessment, and then 136,000 was approved at this time last year to move forward, and that's what Ricky is just referring to. That's going to cover the cost of the lead paint removal and encapsulation, and then also beginning the groundwork for laying in the ramp and so on. The notes there kind of describe the sequence of work to be done: lead abatement, resurfacing some of the concrete, repair the ramp, install and repaint, and then you see restore safety railings, complete the classroom space, put Wi-Fi in, restore the concrete wall in the front, and then later on it would be install padding and nets, and then upgrade the electrical infrastructure as needed.
Now, you and I have a different opinion as to how this all started and went and happened, but anyway, you and I have different opinions on a lot of things. But anyway, my second question is to the young gentleman over there who's Team Tenny. And I want to know how much Team Tenny has raised so far.
Let's see, Team Tenny has raised couple $1,000.
How much?
Couple $1,000 so far.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, approximately $2,000.
I see.
Because that doesn't seem like in the number of years since you all came to the board and said you were going to go right out and do this, that doesn't seem like a heck of a lot of money for that period of time. And so I'm a little disappointed in that.
Okay, thank you. I see board members with hands up. I see two board members. Sean?
Yeah, thank you. I looked at this whole project. I was part of the District 6 board when this first came up. And I have a whole folder at home. I wish I brought it tonight. And so what I view it is there is a structure on this campus that would probably cost $500,000 to make it go away. And that's not a very desirable thing. It would give us a little more, a little more room for more playing, but then we have the electrics down below, and we also have the stormwater issue. So it seems to me that the administration, in collaboration with Team Tenney, who originally said, if I remember correctly, that when this came up before the District 6 board, that they would be a participant in rectifying this structure for use. So I don't remember specifically that it was ever said that Team Tenney was going to take over every bit of financial involvement with the project. And then the administration and has come up with the idea of actually taking this old building and making out of it something viable in today's educational environment. So, I don't think there is a perfect answer, but it seems to me that if you could take a structure that's on the campus already, that has some historical value, that certainly has a lot of value in terms of the way people community-wide feel about it, it seems like it would be very prudent to continue with the plan because the alternative is to spend $500,000 to demolish.
Okay, thank you. Another board member, Tim Maziel.
I think the and the board have a lot of questions about athletic spending. There is lights in Sawyer Field, which seem like a good idea, but I don't know that many details about it. There's an issue of the athletic director. There's the role of the athletic trainer. There's the role of the athletic director. There's Tenney Field. A long time ago, I suggested that budget discussions be around themes, public themes. And I've watched budget discussions at board meetings at Rutland, Burlington, and they carve out a special time and place, maybe the gym, for the public to discuss all budget aspects, all budget issues related to athletics. It's unfortunate that in this 11th hour, we're talking about one aspect of athletics, Tenney Field, when it would be wiser, I think, to discuss athletic spending in one session as a whole.
I think that's reasonable and certainly for later. I'm going to wrap this up a bit. I think we've been on this for quite a while, and Hannah, you have your hand up.
I just want to say, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just want to challenge us to not think of this as an athletic decision.
Yes,
I think that this is a school decision, and this is about our grounds and our community and a learning environment. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't get lumped with athletics.
It's not going to get lumped.
Okay.
And but I can appreciate a thematic approach to some of these discussions. So, but that is not for tonight. So we have a hand online, and I have not called on anyone online yet, so I will, but I am wrapping this discussion up because I feel as if we need to talk about the will of the board at this point. So one last person at this point, Maggie Foley, you have the floor.
Hi, Deborah, thanks. I'm just, as a parent, really interested to hear these plans, and I want to echo what Hannah said in terms of thinking of this beyond sports, because as someone who had a kid in elementary school and a kid in middle and high school during the pandemic, the outdoor learning was so different between the two, and I'm really excited to hear this opportunity for high school kids to get outside. The heat is unbearable during the day, and I think that this sounds like a very reasonably priced solution if you just look at it for that reason, if no other, at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie, thank you. I'm sort of, just in terms of board discussion right now, board comment, I'm feeling as if this is something that will stay in the budget at this point. So if board members want to say something differently at this point, please show your hand. Okay, we are going to move on from Tenny Field. We are moving on from Tenny Field. So if there are other issues having to do with this budget, having to do with the capital plan, please, at this late hour, it is 8:41, keep your comments to the point, okay, without a lot of history, just stay on point. Board member, Sean Murphy.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that the WSESD board approve the budget for FY '26 in the amount of $67,736,630.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second? We have a second from Matt Shibley. Discussion. Victor Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to address something that Tim said a little bit earlier about this budget. And you're adopting a budget that is an open-ended document, and adjustments can be made all the way up until it's voted on, and its approval is by the taxpayers. So any adjustments to the budget would be in the warning. So even though you're going to vote for this budget right now, it is an open-ended document and you can change it at any point. And then when you go to the meeting, you read the warning, and any changes that you had made pursuant to that meeting is what the warning would read. So having Tim say, no, this is too late to make any adjustments to this budget, I strongly disagree. And that's what this is for, because not everybody, I believe, is on the finance committee. And so this is their crack at this budget to make any adjustments that they see fit.
Okay, thank you very much. I did not hear the board members say that it is too late. I heard the 11th hour. So that's what I heard. And so we're going to move on to, did I see a hand here somewhere? Did I see a hand? Okay. Yes? No?
I just have a comment. When you look over all of these pages, whatever color they are, whatever school they're from, I still see many lines that should be discussed. That are luxuries. One, for instance, a skylight at the Green Street School. I believe there are several others that should be looked at and potentially removed from this budget.
So I could speak to the skylight. It's part of original building design. It's not something we're adding, but with all materials, they do wear out, caulking, flashing, and even, it's all exposed to weather, a lot of freeze and thaws and sun. So it's not really some sort of a luxury. It sheds outdoor light into the interior of the building and makes for a very effective learning environment.
It's a skylight that already exists.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful setting, those skylights. So it's going to be maintaining it.
So insurance wouldn't cover the
Not
wear?
maintenance.
Wear and tear.
Not maintenance.
No. Yeah, so we did have a discussion at one point about the notations on the side, and so many of them could be a full paragraph to tell the story. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. Board discussion. Okay. So it's at this point, for a vote. All those in can we hear the motion again, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Just
Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Sean moved that the board approve, to approve the WSESD fiscal year 26 budget in the amount of $67,736,630.
Okay. Although,
And a friendly amendment, I think that it might be beneficial to say that it's a 1.1% increase over the previous year. I think that.
That makes it about $1 million.
I don't know that changes the notion of the motion. I don't know that changes the motion itself. It's an addendum that is sweet, and we could add even more sweet words.
I take away my friendly amendment.
Okay, I don't mean to. Okay, so can I hear the motion one more time, please, before we vote?
To approve the WSESD fiscal year 26 budget in the amount of $67,736,630.
Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? The budget passes. The budget passes, thank you. Okay, wow. We are going to move to, yes,
I just want to reiterate something that Sean said, which is real appreciation for Frank and the staff, and also to the community members who have been showing up. I feel like our board is more engaged than it ever has been around budget processing, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you very much. I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you very much. Thank you. This has been a very hard process. And to the community members who have since left, who have participated in this process, to the administrators, to our chief financial officer, to our superintendent, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sean.
Yeah, as was mentioned earlier, it is requested that, I'll tell you what. I'll make a motion that the WSESD board approves the capital plan, FY26 capital plan as presented tonight.
Oh, I see. The capital plan is up for vote as well.
We need that in order for us to start the engineering,
Got
the bid
it.
process.
Okay, my fault. Okay, yes, capital plan. So so we've got a second to that motion. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Can I hear the motion, please?
Sean Murphy moved that the WSESD board approve the capital plan as presented.
Could we add in the amount of $3,214,100?
Yes, I think we should.
In the amount?
In the amount of $3,214,100.
Okay. So just for the record, can we hear it read into the record?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sean moved that the WSESD board approve the capital plan as presented in the amount of $3,214,100.
For FY26.
For
I'm sorry?
FY26, capital plan
For fiscal year 26.
For fiscal year
26.
Great, okay, thank you. Very precise. We have a motion, it was seconded. Discussion. Ruby.
My feeling, as I've sat on the finance committee and as I've sat on this board, and also kind of connected with other schools and seen how other districts around the state handle their capital plans, I have continually been impressed by the work of this district in not kicking the can down the road. in actually taking care of our buildings. My kids go to Putney. I see every day the impact of investments that are many years old, and I see how positive that is. And I know that is the case for every school in our district, including ones like Oak Grove that are currently in process. So from that perspective, I support the motion and think that we should be critical and we should be asking questions as we were tonight. But overall, I think the answers that come, I'm always immensely impressed with and happy that there's a thoughtful approach from the administration.
Yeah, as I think about other school districts, other buildings, the amount of care that has been put into these multiple facilities have kept the cost down overall. That was very clear, and it certainly came up when the state, is he the state treasurer, Mike?
Mike Pichon.
Yes, yeah, when he was here visiting the UHS, that was made very clear. Matt Shibley.
Yeah, I also in support of this motion and would continue to encourage the administration to partner with Friends of Tenney, other community businesses, organizations, grant funding, to make this as fiscally responsible as possible. Encourage when there are donations, volunteer work, that perhaps we make note of that and determine an appropriate dollar amount when communicating with community members, the investments that our community at large is making.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion as read in terms of the capital plan, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Okay, capital plan has passed. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to the election article, which needs to be approved by the board this evening, and the election article, has everyone seen it? Do we need it read out loud?
I think it would. I have not seen it.
Okay. The legal voters of Windham Southeast School District, including the towns of Brattleboro, Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney, are hereby notified and warned to meet as follows. Brattleboro at the American Legion, 32 Linden Street. Brattleboro, Vermont, 05301 between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. In Dummerston, at the Dummerston School, 52 Schoolhouse Road, Dummerston, Vermont, 05346 between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. In Guilford, at the Broad Brook Community Center, located at 3940 Guilford Center Road, Guilford, Vermont, 05301 from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Putney, at the Putney Central School, 182 Westminster Road, Putney, Vermont, 05346 between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 4, 2025, to vote by Australian ballot on the following article. Article 1, to elect 4 school directors from nominees to serve on the school board of Windham Southeast School District from the day following the annual district meeting. 1 school director who is a resident of Brattleboro for a 3-year term. 1 school director who is a resident of Dummerston for a 3-year term. 1 school director who is a resident of Dummerston for a 1-year term. And 1 school director who is a resident of Guilford for a 3-year term. The legal voters of Windham Southeast School District, including the towns of Brattleboro, Dummerston, Guilford, and Putney, are further notified that voter qualification, registration, absentee voting, and voting procedures relative to said special meeting shall be as provided in chapters 43, 51, and 55 of Title 17, Vermont Statutes Annotated. And then our signatures dated the 28th of this day, January 2025. So it is just establishing the various positions that are open. Yes.
So just as a point of information, so this is the warning for March 4th, but not the warning for our annual meeting.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. Right. Matt Shibley.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the election article as submitted.
Second. Okay, there's a toss-up on who seconded it. Have a
We'll let Jessica has it.
Jessica has it. Okay, second. Okay, we've got a motion to approve the election article. Any discussion?
All those
I just,
yes,
I just wanted to say that since I'm not there today, I was planning on going by and signing it in the morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Colleen. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to start it off by signing this and pass this around, okay? Okay. Okay, that was pretty sloppy, but anyway, that'll do. Okay, so this is going around. As it's going around, Mark, we are up to administrative report, hires, resignations, retirements.
Yeah, we have one resignation, 3 retirements, and 1 new hire. I'll start with the resignation of Katie Tafe of Dummerston School.
Okay, a motion, please?
I move that we accept the resignation of Katie Tafe with regret. Second.
Okay, we've got a second from Kim. Discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a new hire, Elise Norton, as a part-time music teacher at Oak Grove School.
All right. And so, Elise is at Oak Grove, not Dummerston.
It's a shared position.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a shared position, that's why okay, that was my question, thank you, shared position. Motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Brian, thank you very much. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Can I just note, this is Mary. It's actually not shared. It's Dummerston hired somebody and we hired somebody, so 2 different people.
Sorry, Mary.
Oh,
That's okay.
okay, but Dummerston's hire was prior.
Correct.
Got it, okay,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Mary. It was all bundled together, so, okay, thanks.
We did share the position, but Julianne was able to work it out with the person she had already hired, and so
Was this
we've
a
got it
Star
figured out.
Wars duel of some sort?
A little bit.
May have been a little bit, okay.
All right, so now we're up to retirements.
Yes, we have 3 retirements, Casey Dean from BUHS, Joe Rivers from BAMS, and Kim Rose from Oak Grove School.
Okay, a motion to accept the retirements of Dean, Rose, and Rivers.
So moved with regret and congratulations. Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, retirements. Anything else for the administrative report?
Not tonight.
That's you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad the camera's on you, hopefully. Oh, no, it isn't. Oh, dear.
You're good.
Okay, the consent agenda. And as I said at the beginning, it's 3 sets of minutes, January 13, January 14, January 21.
So moved.
Thank you very much. We got a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we are coming to the end. Leadership, as much as possible, I want to hold everything over to the next meeting on February 12th, I do believe, but I think there are a couple of issues that need to take place. Leadership Council updates? Okay, we're moving on. Board Subcommittee updates. All right, Ruby.
The Communications Council, I have sent an email to the board about this. We had a meeting and we've been connecting with Mo Hart in central office, who is facilitating connecting with BCTV and the Commons to host and bring together a candidate forum, which they have historically done. We're starting to get a little bit more fine-tuned with that process, and Mo's been really helpful in that. So the reason I'm bringing it up now is that because we really have passed the baton on, and BCTV and the Commons are going to be hosting and taking on this forum. They have kind of put forward that they'd like to have the candidate forum in BCTV's studio, which would mean it would not be in the keeping with what we've done in the past, but would be a televised or a recorded event. The only people in the studio would be candidates and the likely from the Commons, possibly from the Reformer interviewer. And so the public would not be there. I do not, because we as the district are not running it. I don't know how they are facilitating their questions. I don't know how they're engaging the public. So it is a change, and I put this out to the Communications Council via email. I think that generally speaking, what I heard back was support for this idea. I think the central office is interested in doing this. I did receive some pushback from one Communications Council member who kind of harkened back to the connection to the community and the way in which we engage our community. And so moving to this model is not as favorable from that perspective, but also it's not our event. And so I'm raising this, and I'll stop speaking in a second, but I'm raising this because I wanted to give our board an opportunity to chime in if there was some further objection or concern around this shift, because it is a pretty big shift in terms of how, and people will see it, even though it's not our event, it's a reflection on how we engage with the community.
Yeah. I noticed when it's a virtual event at regarding BCTV, I think you said the community, but it would also be the candidates. We'd be virtual as well. Or would we be in the studio?
No. I think how it's envisioned is the candidates would be in the studio.
I see.
And I think that's similar. It may be similar to what Brattleboro forums have been.
All right.
Yeah.
So, how far away is the studio?
It's in Brattleboro. I mean, it's somewhere here. And I also think that there are four seats and only one contested election.
Yeah.
I think that it would be great if all of those candidates came, but I think that the priority is focusing on that contested election.
Yeah.
But again, it's not our show to run.
Right.
And how that's managed.
Whose show is it to run?
BCTV and the Commons. My understanding from Mo is that as we've developed and grown this relationship and brought on those partners, the Reformer has been a part of hosting in the past. Mm-hmm. The Commons and BCTV have stepped forward and said, we will carry this, baton, we'll do this. And that was always the advice that we as the Communication Council had received. Find community partners who will take this. And so the Commons and BCTV have stepped forward.
Okay, all right. So it seems that there's a recommendation that we do it at BCTV. That's the recommendation.
In large part, that's because last year we had some technical glitches
Yeah.
that were not great. And so in the studio, they have the highest level of control over how they're able to record and then, share with the
I
community.
believe last year it took place at BUHS, and it was very dark and very hard to hear. Yeah, so the lighting, it'll be much more photogenic. So, any discussion about this? Are we in agreement about this? If there's no discussion, I'm assuming we're in agreement.
No objections.
No objections. We've got no objections. Okay, we're in agreement. Moving on. Can I move on?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. No vote, nothing. Okay, SU updates. I think we're in good shape. We're in great shape. Okay, I'm going to put off the common read until, discussion about the common read until the next meeting, please. Okay, any objection? Okay, and I want to note as we get to the summit, please remember there's a change of date having to do with the summit. On Tuesday, February 11, which in the calendar says it's a summit, it is not. It is going to be a WSESD board meeting on site in Cusick. The summit has been moved to the following day, the 12th, at 5 p.m., and it will take place in Cusick. Okay, and that will take the place of an SU meeting. Okay, so I just want to note that, please. Yes.
Point of order, will there be notes for the February 12th summit?
Yes, just as we did, and it will be recorded. The first hour will not.
Yep.
The first hour, 5 o'clock, we're having supper, and then we go into business as usual.
Thank you.
Okay, and it will be all three boards.
And is it still undecided whether the SU meeting will be rescheduled?
I don't know, and I don't want to.
Decided.
I don't want to take it up this evening. I don't know. Let's. It's a scheduling issue. SU members can do that via email, okay, without it being a violation of open meeting law, just to reschedule.
And Deborah, just to give everyone a heads up, I can't be there because I'm out of town, so with the date change, but.
I'm sorry, what?
With the date change, I cannot be there, just so people.
You cannot be where, at the summit?
Correct. So I just want you to have a heads up. I had reached out to Mark when he shared, I will not.
And you're going to miss the summit?
I'm gonna miss this, I know, it's shocking, but. I didn't want there to be any questions the night of, so I'm just letting you know with the date change, I am out of town.
Okay,
Sorry to miss it. Save me some food.
Representation.
Yes. Well, I've already heard we have 2 BUHS people that are gonna be there that night, so.
Well, we will have to take it up on the 12th, that Hannah Parker is not present. And
Say all the
why?
things about me, I won't be there.
What? Okay.
You can watch it on tape.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. We're moving on to unfinished business. We have 2 policies that have come up for readoption. The first one, C3, public participation at board meetings. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then there is a second policy, D6, substitute teachers. And this, I need a motion for readoption.
So moved.
Thank you very, okay, there we go. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Do we have cause for an executive session this evening, Mark Spino?
Not tonight.
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned at 9:09 this evening.
Not bad considering it's a budget meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much.